I spawned in, pressed start, and the prison escape began. The first thing I noticed were the rules. I couldn't break any of the blocks in the item frames on the walls, I couldn't break any item frames, and I couldn't break moving pistons. I noted the rules, noted the blocks I wasn't supposed to break, and started exploring the first room. The first passage was blocked by one of the blocks I couldn't break, so I gave it a quick punch and moved on. There was a hole in the corner that I wasn't quite confident enough to jump down yet, as well as another blocked passage. Over here, there was a hole that I would have to put sand in at some point, but I didn't have any, so I moved into the next room. Did you notice the pressure plate on the floor? Because I certainly didn't. The door snapped closed behind me, and I panicked for a brief moment, trying to get the door open and looking around for anything that I could possibly use. I threw a little spinny fit and then had to reset the world. I would be much more cautious in the future of stepping on random pressure plates. I gave a quick punch to the door that locked me in and headed into the next passage. This looked like a redstone door to me, and there wasn't much I could do with it right now, so I headed into the next room. In this dropper, I found a melon, and there wasn't too much I could do with it just yet, so I ignored it. I checked all of the blocks by the door to make sure none of them were blending in with the blocks I couldn't break, and then headed back to the main room to try and figure out what to do. I couldn't reach the holes in the ceiling, and I had no way of lighting the nether portal, so I was a little bit lost. I wasn't quite ready to jump down this, because I didn't have 15 blocks of course, but I figured I might give this hole a shot. I tossed the melon to the side just in case I died of fall damage, and it turns out it was a good thing I did, because I died. Thankfully, I respawned without having to reset, collected my melon, and continued looking. It seemed like my only possible route at this point was down the sandhole, so I headed down and started looking around for something I could use in the main room. Right here, I found a pressure plate, and it made me nervous because I figured I'd be blocked in, but I couldn't get back up the jump anyway, so there was no reason to not close the door. This room had a crafting table I couldn't reach and 2 chests. The chests had lots of ingots in it that could be used to make lots of potential blocks, so I was a little bit nervous about what to craft. Lots of redstone, lots of sugar, and lots of glowstone powder. It seemed like my goal for this room was to fit through that 1 block gap, so I started thinking about the most efficient way to do it and ended up deciding on a golden pressure plate and an iron trapdoor. I also went ahead and made the most efficient blocks I could, most notably iron bars, which give you 16 blocks for 6 iron ingots. What a deal. The others were just normal blocks and aren't super noteworthy. I placed the iron trapdoor and the gold pressure plate and swam through the gap. I started building up. It looked far away, but I didn't think I would have to use all of the blocks. So imagine my surprise when not only did I have to use all of them, I didn't have enough. I had a brief moment of panic before I remembered that I hadn't yet crafted the glowstone, and that gave me just enough to reach the top. Walking through the hallway and around the corner, I encountered my old enemy, a pressure plate. I gave it a quick glare before walking over and seeing the door slam shut behind me once again. The first thing I noticed was that the glass had a purple tint, which probably meant that I could break it. I found an ender pearl in the dropper and went for the glass. If it was tinted, I wasn't breaking any rules. If it wasn't, I would have to restart. Thankfully, it was, so I stuck it in my inventory and examined the ender pearl stasis chamber. I got ready to threw, and stood back. The pearl bobbed up, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was supposed to do at this point. I wasn't sure if the stasis chamber was part of this room or something I would need later. Because the pressure plate didn't do anything, I assumed it was something I would need later and dropped it down. I was confused again for a second because it didn't look like anything in the main room had changed, and then I remembered the tinted glass. I would finally be able to go back and destroy my adversary, the door and the pressure plate. It snapped closed behind me, but this time I didn't get stuck. Now is a good time to remind you that I have 6 gunpowder in my inventory, which is why I got so excited here. It meant I got to use TNT. I started mining the sand to craft the TNT, and found a dropper behind. Inside, a single brown mushroom. I broke the rest of the sand and started crafting the TNT. I assumed that this was the only way I would be able to get coal from the coal block, so I placed the TNT on the redstone and ran backwards. With the coal successfully in my inventory, I started examining the room I had dropped into. On one side, there was a zombie, a villager, a brewing stand, water with a dropper underneath it, and an apple. The apple and the 8 extra gold in my inventory made me almost convinced that I was going to have to cure a zombie villager. But how I was going to get the zombie to the villager seemed to be the crux of the problem. I went to examine the other side of the room and found a spider eye and a wooden pick in a furnace on the way. On this side, it appeared I would have to get a redstone connection through that block to activate the redstone on the other side. I had an idea of how I could do this with the potion stand, but I wasn't 100% sure yet, so I went back to the other problem. It seemed as if getting the weakness potion and the water bottles weren't going to be the issue here. It was going to be getting the zombie to the villager. It seemed like I had to put something in the dropper, but I had no idea what. I went back to the furnace to get the glass out so that I could start making the bottles for the weakness potion. I had 1 gunpowder left, which means I would be able to make a splash potion, so I wasn't too worried about that. I got the bottles and headed back towards the water when an idea struck me. Accidentally opening the dropper while trying to fill the water bottles made me think that all I had to do was put a water bottle in the dropper for the zombie to get to the zombie villager. I couldn't imagine a water bottle being too useful in another room, so I was okay with this idea. At this point, I decided to see if I could trade with the villager, because for some reason I hadn't tried that yet, and realized that I could trade sugar, but I didn't have enough sugar, which only cemented the idea that I needed to get him to turn into a zombie villager, because trade prices go down when they turn into zombie villagers. I made the golden apple, I got my splash potion of weakness ready, and I prepared my water bottle idea. I heard redstone activate as soon as I put the water bottle in the dropper, and then watched as the zombie hit the villager until they turned into a zombie villager. I prepared my weakness potion, threw it, and then immediately hit them with the apple. The zombies started hitting them again, so I had to trade fast. I traded and watched as the poor villager got hit back into a zombie villager. I turned away with a small shake of my head, disappointed and sad, and started my idea for the other side of the room. I broke the brewing stand with the wooden pickaxe, planning on placing it and putting the extra water bottle in to activate the redstone. I heard the redstone activate, I couldn't see any effects, and I couldn't get back to the room, so I just had to assume it worked. I kept 1 sand with me because I had to drop sand into the other side of this main room, and that's what I did as soon as I got back in. I placed the sand, made absolutely sure it fell down, hit the jukebox, and watched it disappear out of sight. I didn't notice any effects in the main room at first until I saw that this block had slid over, which made me think I was about to be on half a heart. I jumped down after making absolutely sure that's what I was supposed to do, and just as I suspected, half a heart. But I was outside and in the next phase of the prison. Above me, I saw a redstone contraption I assumed was part of another room, and a hole I assumed I need to leap through. Turning my attention to the sand, I broke it and found glass beneath me that I could break. I broke it, making sure I was directly above the moss carpet, and fell down. I looked around for the glass, worried it had fallen into the void, and found it on the edge of the platform before opening the first chest. I found magma cream, slime, snowballs, and eyes of ender in all 3 chests. I ended up having 12 eyes of ender, which made me think I was going to have to fill in an ender portal at some point, so I got a little bit excited about that. I then made all of the blocks I needed to build up back to the top of the platform using the items in my inventory. Before leaving, I broke the piston. Since it wasn't moving, it wasn't bound by the start rules. And then I stood on top of the crafting table and used all of the blocks I had collected from the chests to build up. The only thing I ended up having left in my inventory was the piston, as well as the melon, of course. I found the jukebox, hit it, couldn't see any of the effects though, so I ran on to the next room. Here, I found an ender portal and a passage that appeared to lead back to the main room. The ender eyes were paying off a lot faster than I thought they were going to. The sign told me I needed to place the north side last, so I located the north side and noticed that there were some things down there, but I couldn't reach any of them. So I went ahead and got ready to place the eyes of ender. I placed all the sides except the north first, and then stood back so as to not get immediately teleported. I'd seen this glitch before, but I had no idea how to make use of it right now, as I couldn't get into the room the portal had spawned in, and I couldn't reach anything. Nothing had opened up, so I just headed back to the main room. After looking around for a bit, I found that a passage to the right of the signs had opened up. I dropped down it and found myself in the room where the end portal had spawned. I assessed the area and found a jukebox with a small hole that it looked like I needed to place something in. I wasn't exactly sure what to do here just yet. I hit the jukebox and didn't see anything happen, so I just jumped through the portal. I panicked, trying to swim up the lava and clicking to see if I could get to a chest. I even changed perspective to see if I could find anything, couldn't, and had to restart the entire prison. Finding myself back in this room and uncertain of what to do, I placed the piston in the hole and hit the jukebox, lining myself up with the piston so that it would push me into the portal. This was the only thing I could think of, and it just so happened to work. I was back in the room, this time with no lava. Not seeing anything in my inventory to craft, I broke the crafting table to see if there was anything under it, and there was. I found a splash potion of fire resistance and a dropper, which really would have helped me out a few minutes ago. Not finding anything else in the room, I continued on to find a room with 2 chests. Inside, 26 cobblestone, a sticky piston. Inside the other one, oak planks, nether quartz, redstone, melons, and iron. I looked around but didn't see anything else in this room I could make use of, and I couldn't break chests, so I headed on. Here I found a 1-block jump and had a very important decision to make. What block should I use to do the 1-block jump? I ended up going with a melon block because it seemed to be the least effective block. There wasn't really anything else I could do with it other than use it for a 1-block jump like this. I headed down the passage here and found a very tall room. There was a sign on the side telling me that it was 100 blocks, and when I checked my inventory, I found that I was nowhere near 100 blocks. I saw the redstone though, so I was leaning towards making something with redstone as it looked like the blocks on the wall were attempting to give me a clue as to what direction I should place blocks. The pressure plate here seemed to be another hint in that direction, because pressure plates can be used to activate redstone machines. Heading back down, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before, a block right underneath the pressure plate. Very confident that I needed to craft something with redstone now, I checked my inventory and found that I could craft 3 observers and 2 pistons. I knew that with the blocks in my inventory, as well as the 3 observers and 2 pistons, I could make a flying machine. This took a little bit of Googling, I will admit, but after a little bit of work and a lot of trial and error, I figured out how to make a working flying machine. It's a piston on the bottom, then a sticky piston, then a random block like a crafting table. Here we go. Then 3 observers with another piston on top. The observers have to be pointing in the same direction as the purple blocks on the wall, so I was right that it was a clue about redstone. With the flying machine finished, I headed up, activated the pressure plate, hopped on top, and headed up the 100-block high gap. At the top, an end portal teleported me back to the start room, and after a little bit of searching, I found that another passage had opened up, this time dropping me into another end portal, an end gateway, as I was about to find out. Back in lava, I panicked and had to do some very quick inventory management and made it out, just barely surviving on 2 hearts. I surveyed the room, finding it to be the same room I had teleported into on accident earlier, found a dropper, and then quickly found a button behind this lectern. The button gave me a light-weighted pressure plate, and I moved on to the other side of the room. Before continuing, I checked to see how much fire resistance I had left, and seeing I had enough, checked the bottom of the lava for chests. I didn't find anything, but it was still worth it. I continued on into this strange room where I found soul soil in the corners and a 2.5-block high jump I would have to make. I continued down, noting this strange wither-shaped formation on the floor, and continued into the next room, finding water, 2 furnaces, and endstones. Finding nothing in the water, I became incredibly confident that I was going to have to fight the wither. I grabbed the obsidian, the sword, the glass, and the wither skulls from the chest, and then noticed that part of the endstone was actually sand. So I broke it and found a chest and a crafting table. Finding 10 diamonds in the chest, I headed back up to the room with the soul soil to collect the soul soil. I wasn't allowed to break soul sand, but soul soil was perfectly in bounds. I then headed down to begin my wither fight. I placed all the skulls, accidentally wearing one for a second, and got my sword ready. I headed back down to hide from the initial explosion, a little bit nervous about it. Found it didn't do that much damage, went up, started punching, and killed the wither. I grabbed the nether star, pretty confident I was supposed to craft a beacon, and headed back into the room with the crafting tables. I would need 1 more sand to have all the glass I needed to craft the beacon. I used the sword for fuel because I was pretty sure I wouldn't need it anymore, crafted the beacon, and went ahead and crafted a diamond block before breaking the crafting table to see if there was anything underneath it. There wasn't, so I headed out of the room. I returned to the drop on the other side of the room, making absolutely sure I hadn't missed anything along the way, and dropped down. I headed down the stairs to my right, and found a little hole with a nice little spot to put my diamond block. I placed the diamond block and headed back up the stairs to go the other direction. I found a pressure plate, and assumed it would do something to the diamond block, walked over it, went back, checked, and the diamond block was gone. I continued along the hallway and found a perfect little spot for the beacon. There was stained glass above and a diamond block below, so I was almost positive this is what I was supposed to do. I placed the beacon, and after a moment of panic, thinking it wasn't going to light, I gave it jump 2. This was important because I knew that with jump 2, I could get up 2.5 blocks, which was the exact amount I needed to make it out of the room. I found myself back in the furnace room and immediately headed straight for the 2.5 block jump. I made the jump with ease and completed this very satisfying loop of 2.5 block jumps that was pretty clearly there to make sure I couldn't get up, glitching myself up with fire damage. After this, I ran along the hallway to find another trap door and another end gateway. I put the pressure plate down so that I could crawl through the gateway and headed to the other side. I found myself in a completely locked room with one chest, 12 Eyes of Ender, and as soon as I closed the chest, I was teleported away. I found myself standing on top of the end gateway with a dropper and a hidden fire charge just behind it. I jumped back down to find myself back in front of the gateway and frustratingly found that I could not get back through. I was stuck here for quite a while until I remembered the strange room with the soul soil from the beginning. That in stone formation above the soul soil looked suspiciously like an end portal frame. I had nothing in my inventory but the fire charge and the 12 eyes, and I was pretty sure I needed the fire charge to light the nether portal, so I decided to test out a single Eye of Ender. I heard the noise and got very excited, proceeded to place eyes all around the edge of the portal, and when it generated, I immediately jumped up through using my 2.5 block jump. Finding myself back in the main room, I immediately headed to the nether portal to light it with the fire charge. I headed through the nether portal to find a jump that I couldn't quite make to my left and to my right. My dreaded enemy, the pressure plate. I paused to stare at it for a moment, checked my inventory, walked through, and the door to the nether portal slammed shut behind me. I walked into the next room and saw an ominous red glow at the bottom of a drop, decided against the ominous red glow, and headed down this little tunnel to see what was at the back. I didn't really want to drop down here because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get back, but if it was between this and the ominous red glow at the bottom of the drop, I'm taking the small drop. I found a dropper with 5 glow berries, which gave me a pretty good idea of what I needed to do to make the drop, as I had done some things to survive on half a heart before. When I walked back around, I found myself back in the room with the scary red light and placed the berries so that I could glide down them and drop just slightly lower than I had been before. I jumped onto the berries, slid down, and made the drop with half a heart. After a nervous glance around, I walked over the pressure plate and headed into the next area. I couldn't tell what the pressure plate was doing, and I had absolutely no idea what to do with the black stone slabs beneath me, so I went over to read the sign. Why is there water in the nether? I immediately noticed that there were some strange capitalizations on the sign, so I worked it out, and it spelled white. If you take away all of the lowercase letters, the capital letters left spell white. I couldn't figure out what to do with the pressure plate, so I headed up the water to find a chest where I could make my sign knowledge a little bit more useful. The chest told me I had to pick out the right wool to put in the dropper, and I knew that it had to be white wool. I pulled it out, put it in the dropper, heard redstone shift, collected the rest of the wool because I needed 15 blocks in the main room, headed back, and dropped into the 15 block jump. I was very excited about this because I hadn't had 15 blocks yet. I very clumsily bridged myself up with the wool and headed into the next area of the prison. After making my way up this very long, arduous, and annoying staircase, I accidentally stepped on a stone pressure plate but couldn't figure out what it did, so I dropped into the next room. Here, I found a block of oxidized copper, a crafting table, and a very short jump I had to make my way up. It took me a minute, but eventually I noticed a dropper hidden above the crafting table with 2 gold, a stone pick, and a stone axe. Seeing the oxidized copper, I was pretty sure of what I had to do. I stripped it, mined it with the stone pickaxe, grabbed the copper, and crafted 2 lightning rods to make my way up the short jump. Hopping my way up, I found a redstone contraption hidden behind some glass, so I crafted a gold pressure plate. I stood on it, but that didn't appear to be enough to activate it, so after a little bit of confusion, I threw an item on it, and I discovered that when you have items on a gold pressure plate, it increases its redstone output. The 2 copper ingots weren't enough, but when I stood on it and threw ingots on it, it was enough to activate it. The redstone activated the trapdoor in the stasis chamber from before, and finally having my 1 copper ingot, I headed back to the main room to place it in the dropper. I stuck it in the dropper and heard the redstone of the big door activating. I ran to it very excited and waited as it finished pulling itself apart, stepped over the tripwire onto the platform, activated the tripwire, and started heading up. I could see the moon, my first glimpse of the outside world in years. The platform crested, and I was incredibly excited because I had escaped the Minecraft prison. Thank you so much for watching. I had a great time filming this. Please remember to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.